Welcome back. All right, Tampa Bay and Toronto. Uh, so last year when these teams met, Toronto won game one 5-0. Then they had a 2-1 series lead. They had a 3-2 series lead. Jack Campbell had the shutout in the first game last year. There was a lot of optimism. Tonight, not so much. So the series isn't over. None of the series that got played today are over. But the Leafs, there's an interesting thing with the Leafs. Towards the end of the season, they were playing really well. They were playing really confident. And this game, they just looked scared. One thing that's been said about Toronto in the playoffs is they play like they're scared to lose. And when you do that, you very often do. You're tentative in some of your movements and some of the things, and it just makes it easier for the opposition. And Tampa Bay tonight, they turned it on. So it's Vasilevsky versus Samsonov. They did cheer for the U.S. anthem tonight in Toronto. I thought that was a nice gesture. It does get talked about the whole anthem thing, and sometimes Americans will boo the Canadian anthem. Sometimes you hear about a Canadian audience booing the American anthem. So I thought, I'll mention it. So Belmar scores at 118. It's a turnover. And turnovers absolutely lethal in favor of Tampa Bay tonight. Perry with the assist. So the Bolts press for another. Asimont has a net drive that's held. The Leafs really flat at this point in the game. McCabe has a wrist shot that's held, and there's a shoulder save on Marner. Matthews has a chance to deflect it out. Perry has a shot that's fired wide. And I thought Corey Perry tonight had the best game he'd had in a while. Now, he had the assist there. Perry hadn't had a point, I think they said, in 10 games coming into the playoffs. So the Bolts press at 5.5 minutes. The Leafs get pinned down. Eventually, during another press shortly thereafter at 7:18, Cirelli would score from Hagel. So it's 2-0 in favor of Tampa. And that's where the crowd energy that was up, right near the top, sort of starts coming down. Leaf fans thinking, okay, we've seen this story before. Can we not? So things get pushy on an offside. The emotions are going up. You can see the Leafs are getting frustrated. Leafs press at 8 minutes. McCabe with a hit and Kucherov. That draws some cheers. Leafs press with 7.5 minutes left. Riley has a shot that's blocked. Bunting has a shot that's held. We get more pushing there. And Bunting was already drawing a crowd every time he went near the net, every time he was in the corner. Already Tampa Bay deciding Bunting's kind of a problem they need to deal with. So we get pushing on almost every whistle. I really thought that at some point they'd start just pulling one guy out of those scrums to knock it off. They didn't. Rush chance for Bunting is blocked. Kerfoot has a rush chance that's saved. Vasilevsky, honestly, you give him a 2-goal lead. Yeah, good luck coming back. 50.4 seconds left. Tampa Bay goes back to the power play. They score on this one. It is Kucherov from Sergachev and Killorn at 19:56. And it's a one-timer as the fans wanted to see a penalty called against Tampa, and instead it's a 3-0 lead. Fans outside, they showed them. There was a lot of fans gathered outside that arena, not looking very impressed. Corey Perry only had 3 minutes and 3 seconds of ice time in that first period. He was important on every shift. So it's 3-0 Tampa after one. Second period, McCabe has a net feed that's picked off. Point fires one wide on a rush. The shots are 2-0 Leafs at 3 minutes. Vasilevsky, playoff Vasilevsky. The last few weeks of the season, kind of off. He had that 1 week where he's the first star in the NHL, but outside of that, a little bit off. So, Bolts have a 2-on-1. That fizzles out. Lafferty can't bury one. The Bolts clear it out. The fans call one, the referee doesn't, so that leads to the ref you suck chance, because of course it does. Leafs draw a power play, and it was Bunting that drew it. So that's the first time I've seen Bunting draw a penalty in a while, and I thought, I'm putting that on the board. And they score on it. It's a good cycle. It's buried by O'Reilly from Tavares and Marner at 8:06. The Leafs desperately needed that. That wakes up the crowd, gets them right back into it. The Bolts press to respond. Perry's denied there. We get power play number 3 for Tampa. There's a near miss for Kucherov. Sergachev has a blast that's saved. Stamkos with a shot that's blocked. Shorthanded rush by Marner. Then there's a shorthanded rush by Riley that ends it. And then the Leafs end up going to the power play. So you can feel this momentum shifting at this point. Matthews is denied. Vasilevsky holds. Marner misses a pass. Chernak clears it out. And then a screenshot from the point goes in. Nylander at 13-12 from Matthews and Tavares. So the guys you want to see getting on the board are there. It's a 1-goal game. You can feel it. Toronto's got that momentum. Leafs look to tie it, and then the Bolts go back to the power play. And they score on it. It is a rebound that's buried by Point. Kucherov and Cirelli with the assists at 14:29. And you could feel the energy level for Toronto drop and the energy level in the crowd drop as soon as that goes in. Like, it's done again. And this is something I've talked about for years with Toronto. They can't be doing this again. And we're here, they're doing it again. Chernak was down. Bolts go back to the power play. Hedman had been out since the first at this point. So with Chernak being hurt, the Bolts were down to 4 defensemen the rest of the way. So it was reviewed to decide what the call was, and it's 5 in a game. It's an illegal hit to the head by Bunting, so Bunting's night was done. He has a hearing for tomorrow, so he will be suspended. I've seen debate about how long it's going to be, but it was a pretty vicious hit. Since it's not an in-person hearing, it's not going to be that many games, but my guess is I'll say 2. And 2 playoff games is a pretty severe penalty, and I do wonder if this is going to affect... In the event that this series just goes off the rails and they lose, does that mean Bunting just goes to market? Does Toronto try to hold on to him? Of course, if Toronto loses in the first round, all bets could be off. We could see a change behind the bench. We could see a change at GM. We could see a lot of change in Toronto. There's a lot of pressure on them right now. So, that means it's a 5-minute power play for Tampa, and their power play already looked pretty darn good. So, the Bolts cycle, Giordano has a clear that fails. The Bolts celebrate a goal, it's reviewed, and it was in. So it's 5-2. Perry scores that one from Colton at 17:54. The major will continue. And then there's a goalie interference challenge. Now, announcers saying Sheldon Keefe doesn't have a choice here. He has to challenge it. And all I could think was, it's a major. He's making it a 5-on-3 for 2 minutes if it fails. It fails, it's a 5-on-3 for 2 minutes. 5-2 sounds awful, but you know what's worse? 6-2. 6-2 is worse. So the full 2 minutes, Kucherov has a shot that's held eventually, and it's right after the 5-on-3 ends. It's by like 5 seconds. At 19:58, point scores from Perry and Kucherov, and they showed like a little kid crying as we went to the second intermission because, and all I could think was, there's little Steve Dangles all throughout that crowd right now that are feeling that pain of a Leafs fan. So after the second period, it is 6-2 in favor of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Third period, the arena was very empty to start the third period. And if you've paid that much money for a ticket and you decide not to stick around, I think that really sends a message for how ticked off you are and how frustrated you are. So the Leafs finished killing the major after allowing a bunch of goals during that major. Bolts press at 2.5 minutes. There's a power play for Toronto. Riley has a shot that deflects wide. Tavares has a tip shot that's held. The power play's killed off. 3 shots for Toronto. And then Colton. It's a fast break. Great pass by Perbix. Perbix and Cole with the assists at 7 minutes because now they're top 4 defensemen, right? And yeah, it's a great pass by Perbix and Colton buries it. That was the second shot. No chance for Wall as Wall came in the third period. And I'm sure that the debate's going to be out there about whether or not Samsonov starts game 2 or Wall. If it's Wall against Vasilevsky, I don't know. Anyways, so that happens. Second shot, and then Yarncroke would answer at 8:06 from Matthews and Marner. So that's 7-3. You play up Hall & Oates, but it still doesn't feel like they're back in it, right? Because it's 7-3. Bolts press with 9.5 minutes left. Brody fires one wide on a 3-on-2. There's a power play for Toronto. That's killed off. 1 shot allowed there. Tavares has a shot that's held. The Boo Birds are out in the final minute. Leafs press to close it, but they're still booed off the ice. So your final score is 7-3. That is the most goals Tampa Bay's ever scored in a game 1 in a series. So yeah, they lead 1-0. 3 stars are Perry, Point, and Kucherov. So Corey Perry, playoff Corey Perry showed up tonight. Shots on net are 15-10 Tampa Bay in the first, 14-10 Tampa in the second, and 11-5 Toronto in the third. Final shots are 34-31 for Tampa. Because of the 5-minute penalty, because of the challenging for goalie interference, it bloats the stats for Tampa. They're 4 for 8 on the power play. Because every time you score on the major, it then counts as a new power play when it starts up again. Toronto was 2 for 4. The hits were 42-39 for Toronto. Vasilevsky saved 28 out of 31. And I think that's the scary thing. I didn't think Vasilevsky was great tonight, so he wasn't necessarily great, and Toronto loses the game. Samsonov, 23 saves on 29 shots, and Wall saved 4 out of 5. So Toronto needs to win game 2, or this could be over quickly. And again, if Tampa Bay wins this series, even though they're 3-time Stanley Cup finalists in a row, we're going to see I think we'll see some big changes in Toronto. That being said, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video, and it's just game one. Series isn't over. But this didn't feel great if you're Toronto tonight. So let me know your thoughts. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.